last loan motion we will ever see in this honorable chamber for Alba Petrocaribe Belize Energy Limited APL. Why? I say this, Mr. President, because we will be discussing later today, and I assume taking through all its stages, a bill to make this kind of loan motion no longer necessary, no longer urgent for the government attention, and there will probably never be another one like this. So let us look at it very carefully. The recitals in the loan motion state that whereas in June 2005, the Republic of Venezuela and several Caribbean countries, including Belize, entered into an energy cooperation agreement, which provided for the establishment of Petrocaribe, and that in furtherance of that energy cooperation agreement, Venezuela and Belize entered into a bilateral energy cooperation agreement in September 2005. And in fact, that agreement is, I believe, available online, can be seen, may be read. And whereas pursuant to Article 1 of that agreement, Venezuela agreed to supply to Belize crude oil, refined products, and liquid petroleum gas up to 4,000 barrels a day on an annual basis, and designated what is known as PDVSA, Petróleos de Venezuela S.A., to supply the said petroleum products certain terms and conditions. Now, among those certain terms and conditions was the agreement that there would be savings in buying this petroleum product because the government of Belize would be required to pay upfront only a portion, and that the other portion would be available for social programs that would uplift and better the lives of people in Belize. There is nobody in Belize, and I repeat, Mr. President, nobody that had any difficulty with that. As we all know, Mr. President, the rise in cost of fuel from that time to now has shown that the entry into this agreement was something that was important, necessary, and was meant to ameliorate the high cost of procurement of fuel that small countries, particularly small Caribbean countries, face. And this is so for many reasons, Mr. President, including the fact that we really purchase, relatively speaking, so little fuel. But our small economies are so impacted by the cost in fuel, and then of course added to the fact that government has to raise revenue by imposing taxes on that. So to facilitate the supply of petroleum products, through this Petrocaribe agreement, Belize and Venezuela established a joint venture company, which is known as Alba Petrocaribe Belize Energy Limited, or APBEL, which consists of PDV Caribe and the government of Belize company, BPEL, which is Belize Petroleum and Energy Limited. And APBEL is the body which is designated by Belize and Venezuela as being the importing entity for petroleum products purchased from Venezuela. And under the terms of the agreement, the supplies of petroleum products to Belize consists of two portions. As I've said before, a cash portion and a finance portion, and the ratio is 50% each. What does that mean? It means, Mr. President, that when we purchase gas from Venezuela, we pay for half, and the other half is put in a fund. And it is that fund from which monies are borrowed in order for the social programs that should be Petrocaribe to be carried out. And in September of 2012, the government of Belize and Appel signed a revised loan agreement setting out the terms for lending the finance portion to GOB. And under the terms of that agreement, the cash portion is payable to PDVSA by Appel within 90 days of importation. And the finance portion is lent by Appel to GOB on concessionary terms, payable over 25 years at 1%. Now, if you have to pay, the government has to pay. The government has to pay Venezuela, PDVSA, 50% within 90 days. That tells you that they know how much, exactly how much they have to pay, and exactly how much the finance portion will be well before the 90 days. And I need to make this point, Mr. President, because it means that there is absolute certainty as to how much that will be, and therefore there is absolutely no excuse for bringing a loan motion like this after the fact, and asking us on the basis of half a paragraph to, and I'll read it, confirm and validate the borrowing by the government of Belize from Appel of the total sum of US $28 million during the period September 2014 to February 2015. September, October, November, December, January, February. 7 months, 6 months. So do the math. We have been spending at an average monthly rate on this supposed goals. We've been spending $28 million divided by 6. Do the math. And you tell us that the purpose of the borrowings was principally to finance capital projects, including the construction and rehabilitation of streets and road infrastructure countrywide, to finance the construction of sporting facilities, and as an afterthought, let's stick it in there, to provide social and community assistance to the poor and socially marginalized in accordance with GOB's social and economic programs. But there is this pesky animal, you see, Mr. President. There is a pesky beast. And that pesky animal is a law of this country that says that the Finance and Audit Reform calls on us and provides that any agreement effecting borrowing by the government of Belize over $10 million or in the aggregate amount in any fiscal year exceeding $10 million shall require a resolution in the National Assembly because I want to remind us, Mr. President, that one of the architects of that very important law was my friend, my colleague, the leader of the I want to remind us that in November of 2014, as as this loan motion very kindly reminds us, okay, there was a loan motion passed in this house, in this chamber, approving after the fact a thing which we objected to very loudly at the time, and we object again. The total sum of US $114 million for the period September 2012 to August 2014. And they did not learn their lesson then. They just made and again after the fact bring a loan motion for the borrowing of this money. And they're going to try and tell us that, well, you know, really we have to come after the fact because we never really know how much we may have borrowed when we're borrowing. Let's get one thing clear for the record, Mr. President. The minute you know how much cash you have to pay the government of Venezuela, that is the very minute you know how much you're going to borrow. So don't tell me you don't know. It is impossible to pay the government of Venezuela 50% if you don't know what is the other 50%.
Yes.
Let's be very clear about that. And you have 90 days to do it. So you're going to tell me, Mr. President, that ignoring the very law that took so much time, energy, and dedication from each and every one of those persons who were concerned about reform, including the leader of government business today, including all of the legislators who sat in this chamber and passed the Finance and Audit Reform Act in 2005. We're just, as a parliament, going to now ignore that and come after the inconvenient fact and spend or ask for us to approve. Actually, they're not even asking if we approve. They're asking us to go even further. I didn't see this language confirmed